Right. So welcome to our session on disaster risk audit. Why is it mandatory? So today we designed this session to explore the crucial importance of conducting disaster risk audits and why there are essential components of effective disaster risk management. So through this session, we aim to highlight the value of assessing and understanding the potential risks to enhance preparedness, resilience, and response capabilities. We believe that this is an exercise which is supposed to be followed by organizations and even individuals, while we are working on the disaster management field. So we had a brief poll in our social media platform prior to this session, where we had posed this question, whether your organizations have conducted disaster risk audit or not. And surprisingly, around 67% of the responders answered no, like we have not conducted a disaster risk audit, or I'm not aware about it. So given the need for more discussion on this topic, we have organized a session to learn more about disaster risk audits and its importance, tools, and methodologies. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us today. So before starting, let me welcome or give the platform to our Prishti sir, who has actually given us this idea to keep a session on this topic, to share his perspectives as an introductory remarks on the session. So he is a respected development and disaster management expert with 40+ years of experience. He has contributed to SPHERE standards and led major disaster management efforts in India. So currently his focus is on establishing an independent strategy center for development and disaster management in India. Sir, please, welcoming you to share your introductory remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah, for the introduction. I'm not in the process of setting up any strategy center right now. That is a 10-year-old history. I'm into something different right now. But this is a very important subject that you have decided to hold a discussion, and probably a training session this is formatted as. So in that context, I like to introduce some of these conceptual elements that will help the discussion and the ideas to further investigate it. According to me, generally speaking, audit is a post-action phenomenon. Once you do some action, like typically audit is a term used in accounting, that you spend the money and following certain procedures, and then audit takes place whether you have followed the procedure or not. So then that audit is to make sure that your procedures are duly complied and are duly followed. So in that sense, if we say disaster risk audit, we need to have a plan of action, and after the action, whether it is done as per the norms, as per the procedure, as per the protocol, then you do the audit to find out whether it is done properly or not. But in Indian context, as of now, I have not seen any disaster risk assessment as such in a very structured manner. Many discussions we have participated and we have talked and all that, and often it is said that disaster risk assessment is part of the environmental impact assessment or the social impact assessment. Could be true to some extent, but not true fully. So therefore, it is necessary that we look at the disaster risk assessment as the first step for getting into any development action. And then once you do the assessment, then next stage is, I'll say in my opinion, next stage is the preparing a plan, that how these are the risks associated with this development exercise, and this is the plan to be mindful of these risks, and this is the way we'll try to mitigate this risk, or even after making efforts to mitigate the risk, if there will be any risk still associated with residual risk, then we'll be able to deal with this manner to minimize the impact. And then then you after the plan, then you implement it following the plan. So the first is disaster risk assessment, disaster risk management plan, then implementation of the plan. Then after when the implementation plan is done, then you start looking at it periodically, whether the risks, associated risks, are factored well, the mitigation measures have been handled well, the protocols or the norms or the criteria has been followed properly. Those aspects are done to check or to validate our risk analysis. So this is the cycle. I'll say that this is the part of the risk audit is a part of the risk analysis cycle, which starts with risk assessment, followed by preparation of the risk management plan, and then implementation of the plan, and then periodic audit to improve on the subsequent plans, and picking up lessons from one plan to the other plan and things like that, so that gradually we create a resilience in our system, and our development initiatives becomes a risk-proof development actions. So that is my idea of introducing this risk audit, because risk audit people will immediately catch, that's why risk audit, but actually risk audit I mean is the part of the looking at the whole cycle of risk analysis, risk assessment, risk planning, risk management, and risk implementation of the risk plan. This is almost similar to the pattern that is followed in our social impact assessment protocols that have been widely used in our country. So this is my introductory remark. Then I like to listen to others, listen to experts like Professor Gupta is there, and Professor Santosh is also there, and others will be there also. We'd like to listen to them, and if needed, I'll put some additional thoughts to it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Professor, for giving us that insight. You clearly mentioned about the gaps, that is like existing gaps in disaster risk, and what is the importance about it. So thank you so much for your inputs. It was really valuable. So moving on to our session, I would now like to welcome Professor Anil Gupta, who will be sharing more about, as an introduction of disaster risk audit, the concept, the definition, and also the key components and the reasons or factors that makes a disaster risk audit mandatory, and also about briefly of the benefits and how does the audit contribute to enhance resilience and preparedness. So I would like to give a brief introduction. So Professor Anil Gupta, who is currently serving as a head ECDRM and IDM of Government of India, he's a sustainability risk management strategist with over 25 years of experience in disaster management, environment, and climate resilience. He has led international and national projects developing innovative approaches such as eco-DRR and integrated mainstreaming of climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. Professor Anil has contributed to the preparation of national disaster management plans, capacity development, and policy dialogues, working closely with UN agencies and other international organizations. He currently serves as a full-time professor and head of the Environment, Climate, and Disaster Risk Management Division at National Institute of Disaster Management. He is a prolific author and editor, and his expertise spans environmental science, law, project management, climate change, and risk management. He has received numerous awards and fellowship for his contribution to the field. Sir, it's an honor to have you in this session, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. And so thank you for so generous introduction. And really wonderful to have the opening remarks from the Prustiji. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. Has Professor Santosh joined?
So he's facing a technical difficulty. I'm working on it, Professor.
I was searching for him. And it would be wonderful to witness who all are here, if they can open their video for some time, because so that even a better energy will flow So it would be good. It would be good. I'm using my trainer right here as I am delivering this talk. So to request all of the participant to open their video for some time. So it's really wonderful that the Sphere India has taken this very, very important initiative along with partner of a technical discussion on disaster risk audit. So during my around 20 minutes discussion, I'll be also focusing on the conceptual dimensions, its genesis, and also why disaster risk audit is becoming important, why it is being talked now much more as compared to the past. So I'm using a PowerPoint presentation here, and I think I can share. Yes, I can share. Is it visible? Kindly confirm.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, it's visible, sir.
Perfect. So I'll make it full screen. Okay. I hope it is full screen now.
Yes, yes, it is.
Perfect. Perfect. So I'll be touching upon the concepts, tools, and strategies. So setting a background for understanding about the genesis and the process of disaster risk audit. I'll be the very first thing, as Prushti was also referring, that audit is some kind of examination. And examinations means you have done already something. So that is very important that generally we talk in any organization about audit, about the financial or accounts related audit. So basically it is also the audit, some kind of accounts of whatever has been done, whatever has not been done, and why it has not been done. So basically this is the kind of a understanding about audit. Audit is also very much related with examination of records or examination of data and verification of records. So, and why audit is required? Because many times we have many decisions which have notional statements that this should be done, but whether it has been done, and if something has not been done, why it has not been done, and to what extent all the mandates have been fulfilled. So for this purpose, that to what extent we could really move forward in our envisaged journey, the audits are done. Then when we talk about disaster risk audit, we will also discuss that what is the distinction between and among the terminologies like hazard risk analysis. We have the hazard and operability analysis or hazard analysis. Then we also have the tools like vulnerability analysis. Then the combined tools that we call it hazard, risk, vulnerability, and capacity analysis. Then we have the post-disaster assessment tools also, like the post-disaster needs assessment. We also have the rapid environmental impact assessment of disasters. So RIA, so different tools are there. Then we will also understand that from where this thought process about disaster audit has come, disaster risk audit has come. So I find that there are two main routes from where the thought process has come. Since disasters lead to significant financial damages and losses, so financial accounting and financial audit also many times come across the issues of losses that has been incurred because of any kind of emergency, any kind of accident, or any kind of disaster risk. So from there, the idea of an audit has flown. Second thing, within the corporate system and also in big housing complexes, any kind of a technical, I would say, setup, the concept of safety audit has been there for quite long time. Almost past 4 decades, the concept of safety audit is there, and it has been ever evolving also. When I say evolving, it evolved from safety audit to SHE audit, safety, health, and environment audit, that takes into account various kind of hazards also. So that is also coming in the background, that how the thought process of disaster risk audit has come. So I will also be discussing about some tools, approaches, and strategies. This is a publication dates back to 1997. You can see on the right side, top right side. It was published in July 1997. Very interestingly, the kind of components here in the overall gamut of disaster risk management that has been discussed that time are now being discussed globally. Very interestingly, this article referred that how life cycle assessment would be important in reducing, understanding the risk reduction throughout the cycle of any material or throughout the cycle of any kind of a development. So now it is being considered as relevant, but in the recent past or till now, it was not thought of. But now when people are talking that disaster risk audit should also take into account of various resources. So when we are talking about the resources, when we are talking about the supply chain systems, when we are talking about the end of life disposal of the various goods and services, these kind of things are coming to limelight. So this is important that the thought process about disaster risk audit is very long. These are two other pictures from the same article that was published in 1997 that was talking about the disaster management policy and impact analysis. So how various kind of assessments, they have interrelationship, and the preventive measures and proactive measures both are interlinked, and a new thought process of the risk mapping based planning also came. And on the other hand, the perception analysis and mock drills. So these kind of things. Yeah, on the just extreme right, you can see the tool like mitigation analysis. That is not yet in practice, but this was talked in 1997. The mitigation analysis, basically. So whatever mitigation measures have been identified and recommended, to what extent that has been put into practice, and what has been its impact in terms of reducing the risk. Basically, it is the disaster risk audit is the really this thing that some kind of a performance analysis or evaluation. So this is a framework of risk mapping based planning process. Again, when I am showing these things, so this is risk mapping based planning process. This is from the publication of June 2002. So almost 21 years. So I am showing this that there has been discussions. There has been some kind of practice also, like how we identify suitable systems, looking at the risk of natural hazards combined with the man-made disasters as well as the environmental risk also. Then looking at the safer sites for the newer developments as well. So what is important here, that disaster risk audit can be thought at different, I would say that different tiers. So it may be for an organization, it may be for a small unit of an organization, it may be for a region. So we can think of doing disaster risk audit for an state. We can think of inducing disaster risk audit for a city system. We can think of disaster risk audit for a university, the college campus, or for a housing complex as well. Certainly, the context will change a little bit, looking at where we are really going to apply. But auditing primarily, as Prestigi also referred to, auditing primarily was related with some organization, some kind of a management system, or some kind of a project management. Audit is related with the performance assessment. Or this. Why the thought process about auditing the risk is starting? One of the references, there are several references that are now being discussed. One is the Global Climate Risk Index of 2021. India ranked 7th in terms of economic losses. So as I referred that the financial risk audit and safety risk audit, both basically are combining here to give us an idea that the losses incurred in terms of the financial losses by disasters, losses because of the climate change, extreme events in terms of financial losses, as well as the various kind of resource management and the circular economy, green economy, these kind of things are also coming. So all are indicating about understanding that what has been our performance. For example, now we are committing, India has committed that we'll be carbon neutral by 2070. So periodically, when we make any kind of evaluation that what has been our agenda, what kind of interventions we decided, whether we could do it or not. And if something we could not do, why? So basically that why is very important in audit. I will refer to that when we go for conducting any kind of a disaster risk audit, or safety, health, environment audit. I'm just telling one question, one example, that it is not important that a fire exit is not clear. Uh, but the question would be why the fire exit is not clear. So just by saying that fire exit is not clear, make it clear, or why there is no signage on the fire exit. No, it doesn't work. Audit will make sure to investigate the root cause why the fire exit was not provided proper signage. Who is responsible? Why the failure occurred? Basically, the analysis go deep to that level. Then various kind of tools that has given rise to thinking about the disaster risk audit, like recent past 15 years or so, globally, there has been a thought process that how do we apply strategic assessments, strategic environmental assessment. Like I recall witnessing the release of the first strategic environmental assessment that incorporated all the components of disaster risk management for the north province of the Sri Lanka, the Jaffna region, post conflict. So before starting a new kind of development, how do we take care of disaster risk issues? Then various tools that had in some or other way indicated the need of disaster risk auditing, like in EIA, Prestigi referred to. Then there is another tool that is in practice that is called environmental auditing. So environmental auditing is primarily about the environmental performance against the yardsticks for compliance, the legal mandate, the mandate of company's own policy. So for example, if we are doing the same thing for a city, so city has a policy about reducing the risk of disasters. So whether we could really achieve it or not, and if we could not, then what are the causes of that failure? What are the root cause? Then life cycle analysis, I already referred to. One example I will quote, that we are promoting solar systems like anything, but most of the solar, the potential areas for solar energy promotion are also the potential cyclone risk areas and the wind disaster risk areas. And in case of a catastrophic cyclone, when these kind of a solar systems are destroyed, solar system have a lot of hazardous materials in terms of the PV cells or batteries. How are we going to deal with the end of life scenarios? Then the safety risk assessment, health risk assessment, and ecological risk assessment. Basically, ecological risk assessment has a lot of potential to interplay and infer in terms of upcoming disaster risk. So, for example, the disaster risk which is not appearing at present, but ecological risk assessment can help us understanding the future disaster risk, particularly of landslides, particularly of the flash flood. So ecologically dynamic areas, ecologically dynamic and sensitive regions, this kind of tool gives us, helps us develop in understanding. Then certainly legislation, footprint or carbon footprint. Then a new term is ongoing, that is eco audit. Basically that talks about the land use, landscape, these kind of things. Then green audit is also being discussed. Then safety audit I already discussed. She also already discussed that. But if we are talk of a water audit, if we talk of a water audit in a city, certainly it is going to discuss about the water scarcity issues as well as the flood issues. So it will talk about the stormwater issue, management issue. It will talk of the sewerage issues. It will talk of the water supply systems, which is, on the other hand, a key concern of the disaster risk management for the city as well, because urban flood is the most common menace the cities are facing. So that is one example. Energy audit, that will also bring in reference the interdependency of the various infrastructures and the infrastructure resilience. So then the insights from all these kind of tools moving towards disaster risk management recommends for a risk audit. And risk audit of a disaster risk audit. So normal risk, not of the normal risk, but the risk that can lead to catastrophe, the risk that can lead to major losses and damage events. So that will be basically the risk audit. So I was talking about the strategic environmental assessment. Strategic environmental assessment, see, it is just giving an idea, only one example. There are several examples. One example that what can be the impact of an agriculture policy. So if the agriculture policy is promoting lot of subsidies on fertilizers, agriculture policy is promoting lot of land use conversions from the farmland to non-farm or the forest area to agriculture. What kind of challenges are going to be faced by our natural resource system, for example, soil, water, landscape? And if landscape changes are there on the large scale, certainly it is going to lead to to increasing risk of landslides, floods, drought, these kind of things. So this is on a geographical scale, different from the organizational scale. On the geographical scale, this is just one example. This is a framework of environmental impact assessment of mining sector or mining industry. So there basically disaster risk assessment and disaster management plan is integral to that this process. So basically we'll also have to keep in mind that we need not to reinvent the wheel everywhere. Basically, we'll have to see that what is existing and how can we really customize the available tools and promote the use of disaster risk auditing. This is telling that in the convergence between or the overlap between basically strategic environmental assessment, environmental impact assessment, and risk the disaster risk assessment. So there are a lot of commonalities and a lot of overlap also. If we talk about auditing, basically these are very important. I would say that 7 key dimensions of audit. One is like, for example, we should have a clear policy. If we are doing on a geographical scale, or we are doing on a maybe for a district, or maybe for a city, or for an organization. So if we are planning for conducting a disaster risk audit, we should have a clear goal set for that disaster risk audit. That why really we are going to do that? What really we want to achieve? Then basically identify the audit rules, then the process frequency, then what are the key parameters, and how are you going to conduct this auditing? And then manage the results and follow up risk report, and then finally assess the emerging risks. So what are the new things that is also coming? This is showing a risk audit framework of an organization in general, and we find that almost the similar kind of a risk audit framework for any organization can be implemented for disaster risk audit also. However, the context will change. So not only not exactly the financial risk, not exactly the market risk, but the risk of disaster that can lead to losses and damages to the business continuity will be the key context here. For example, and this is as I was discussing that in principle it is the performance audit. So basically we should have a clear policy. We should have a clear organizational development for audit, that who is going to do an audit, what is the team, then what shall be the plan for conducting an audit, then how are we really going to do that measurements, how are we going to do the reviews based on the outcomes of that audit. So I think that these kind of things are important. Then when we think of the concept of disaster risk audit, so that's very important, that it refers to systemic and comprehensive examination of an entity. So entity may be a geographical region, entity may be a district, entity may be an organization, entity may be by office also. So we can use these kind of variables, this kind of jurisdictions, and we can decide that on what scale we want to understand. So entities risk management process, policies, practices. It aims to assess the entity's vulnerability, capacity, and resilience to disasters. So this is very clear. Then when we talk about audit, so audit is basically aiming at improving the resilience. So basically it examines that based on the risk assessment, based on the vulnerability assessment that has been done, and based on the risk management plan that is already in place, whatever has been prescribed, to what extent that has been implemented. So it also examines the current strategy of the risk management It also helps in identifying the gaps in the existing risk assessments and also the new layers of vulnerabilities. It also provides the recommendations for improving future risk assessments as well. Also, like what kind of new database would be required for managing better decisions in the future. So it also refers that the future ability of the system, of the community, of an organization to address the disaster risk and to enable that coping capacity, not only of the individuals but of the system also. So system as a whole. Then if we just try to identify the components of disaster risk audit, so risk assessment, that is the primary thing. Then the governance and policy review, preparedness and response capacities, business continuity and recovery planning, and community engagement and participation. The definition of community will vary. For example, if we are doing for an organization, it will be like employees and the various stakeholders associated with the business of that employee, that organization. Then various steps. So as I told, that first step is planning. So that requires a lot of brainstorming to plan for conducting a disaster risk audit, because a lot of customization, lot of tailor making would be required in the framework of disaster risk audit for a specific organization. Then we should have a clear policy that what has been our goal. For example, we want to reduce the morbidity by this percentage, and we want to reduce the mortality by this percentage, or we want to reduce the losses in economic terms by this much, or we want to reduce the losses of the environmental goods and resources by this %. And this has been an agenda set, and against that, we are conducting that audit. Then a team, constitution of team would also be very, very important, because based on the plan that you developed and based on the policy goals that you set, you will have to design your team. Team should have it can be of the different types. For example, it can be a third-party audit where no one internal member is involved in conducting that audit. It can be a second-party audit, means you have 4 different units, or you have several districts. So, for example, district A is people are appointed to conduct an audit for district B. So it can be like that. It can also be an internal audit. You can identify your own people and ask them to conduct an audit, and they can be asked for conducting an audit. So it may require experts. It can require the internal members who know the systems. All the time, the entire process cannot be run by the people from outside. The people who understand internally the system, their roles would be very, very important. Then when we look at what are the steps for disaster risk assessment. So before that, I think it's very important that we know that what are the hardware and software needed. When I say hardware, basically these are the close-ended questions, or even sometimes partly the open-ended questions also. But the set questionnaires, and questionnaires are to be designed that can help us verify the interventions and verify the points of failures, verify the points of success, verify the question marks. So I think that's very important. So the questionnaire based interventions, questionnaire based assessments, that is the first step of a disaster risk audit, and that is the hardware being used. And each time the hardware is specifically designed for a system. Then software is also very important, because only the questionnaire-based assessment doesn't provide you complete picture. You will need to go and talk to people in person, and then at different levels. For example, you need to talk to the top administrator. You need to talk with the middle level managers. You need to talk about the shop floor workers, and in the government, the people who are actually responding at the field level. Then similarly, we can think of the contextualizing based on the organization, based on the geographical jurisdiction. So audit questions are very important. As I referred to one question, for example, I'm giving another example. So if I see that a conference hall doesn't have two gates has only one gate, one door. So we all know that ideally there should be two doors. In case of fire, in case of any other kind of emergency, the people can be rescued, people can evacuate very well. So any other example also we can think of. So such kind of questions are incorporated in the audit questionnaire. Like if I say that if I see any chemical drum not properly leveled, so it is not sufficient that we record that drum was not leveled and it should be leveled. No, why the drum was not leveled? Basically, that is the kind of question we need to ask. So similarly, in the natural hazard scenario also, we need to ask this kind of question. So if sufficient water facility to be provided for the people are in the region which is facing heat wave, similar kind of thing. So why it has not been provided? So basically, then it will question back that whether the proper preparedness was there or not, or whether the early warning was there properly reaching there or not. So it will lead to a chain of questions. So basically, that is important, and that is basically the real use of disaster risk assessment. That it helps in primarily two ways. One is in mid-course correction. So whatever ideas or whatever means we have identified for risk mitigation, whether they are appropriate or not, or do we need any modification? Do we need any kind of substitution? So this helps in this. And second thing, it helps in improving the future course of action. And basically, after audit, the audit finalization is done jointly. So even if it is a third-party audit, the report finalization would be done in participatory way with the entity, with the people who are at the helm of affairs. So that is an important thing. And then follow-up actions are also designated. So last chapter tells that how you are going to take the follow-up actions on the outcomes of that audit. So that's important. Then if we conduct regularly the disaster risk audit for organizations, or maybe at the community level, for example, even if we can extrapolate it at the panchayat level also. So how it is going to help us? One is that it is helping us because then when such an audit is being conducted, you talk about disaster risk. People discuss about that. People think about that. So it helps in creating better risk awareness and understanding about disasters. That is also the first priority of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Then second, improved preparedness and response, proactive risk reduction measures, then optimal resource allocation. This is very important. You should not create a lot of piles of various resources, and when actually it is required, it is of not of use, or the overburden of resources itself becomes a challenge. So it should also not happen. Then stakeholder engagement and collaboration, and then compliance with the standards and regulations. In many ways, we also have the standards and regulations. Now, Bureau of Indian Standards are also coming with a lot of standards about adaptation, about climate resilience. For disaster, we have building codes and many other standards are there. So the audit also talk about the standards. So against the standards, to what extent we could meet those. And IDM has also recently come up with some kind of a value addition to thought process about the journey towards enabling the application of disaster risk audit, a culture of disaster risk audit. So on the left was a study of underlying causes for disaster-related damages and losses. The study of 2 recent cyclones. The Sphere India was our technical partner. The Sphere India team was the key contributor with us in undertaking this study, a very detailed study. And on the other hand, the new mechanism in India has been recommended, the institutional mechanism for evaluating human deaths. We have not used the term death audit, but primarily it is discussing about conducting a death audit. So each and every death, there should be an audit that what was the failure that person did not survive or person died. So that is very important. We are also working, and in fact, we have undertaken a pilot study of 4 cities of conducting disaster risk audit for the city of Jaipur, Guwahati, Visakhapatnam, and one more city, Srinagar in Kashmir. So 4 cities we have conducted the risk audit for considering 5 major hazards for those cities. The report is being finalized and will be published maybe within a month or so. It is under printing. So with this, I thought of putting some background about the concept, evolution, thought process about disaster risk audit, and I'm sure that I could help generate some insights. And thank you to Sphere India for inviting me for sharing some of my thoughts. If we have any question, I am here for some discussions. Yeah, so I will be stopping my PowerPoint.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a wonderful session. Like, actually, you really talked about the basic concepts. You covered about like what are the steps in order to do and how to go forward with it. So moving on quickly, we'll move to the second part of the session where we talk about the methodologies and approaches that are being commonly used, and also some examples of some specific tools or techniques utilized in disaster risk audit process. So for that, I would like to welcome Professor Santosh Kumar. He's an expert with more than 30 years of experience in different positions in the development, planning, and DRR sector. A PhD in economics, he studied gender and development in IDS, Sussex, UK, and received professional training in disaster risk management from Israel, backed with international work exposure at the World Bank and intergovernmental body of SARC. He has also worked at state levels in different capacities at UP Academy of Administration, Nainital, and RIPA Jaipur. He is an experienced hand in designing, planning, and implementing mitigation and long-term disaster recovery plans and projects. He brings with him a rare combination of operations and academia. We are honored to have you also, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sphere India. And I'm grateful that you have invited me along with Professor Gupta, and I could see his wonderful presentation. And
I was waiting for you, sir. I think you had some technical glitch. I was eagerly waiting while I was studying.
But interestingly, the concept which has been dealt already, and majority of the concept that how it should be done and what are the tools available, I will just quickly, as a common person understanding, and then we go for as a kind of a professional competence, what is required for the audit. I'll give you one very clear example. Like when we go earlier, and nowadays it's, things are changing, but taking that also into account, when we go for a marriage proposal of a daughter to the other family, and then we start looking at different things. And with different things, whether my daughter would be happy in that family, how is the boy, how is the economic status of the family, what is their social kind of a status, and how the mother would behave, or how the father would behave, how would be the family-to-family relations. These are the things we look into normally. And this is a kind of a assessment of the risk, probable risk, that trying to make daughter's life in a very comfortable position because the changes from one place to the another place. This is a very simple kind of a example of giving an assessment and audit, what I'm trying to make a distinction. But if the marriage is already taken place and 10 years of marriage is there, and then we start looking at that, how the marriage went off, that marriage was good, bad, or the ugly. And then we start looking at various parameters. And that's parameters is that certain task has already been accomplished. And now we wish to look at that, what are the challenges and in the taking up the marriage forward and so on and so forth. This example, why I've chosen, because we, as a social animal, normally we are into the process of risk assessment. And on a day-to-day basis, whether it's a financial or whether it's a social or it's a kind of a economic assessment which we do, three fundamental questions comes in making any audit, which is a risk audit. One is that why we should look for audit. This is the one question. The second question would be that what is this, that audit? What is this audit? If we are interested that audit is required, so what is this audit? And the third is the process, how audit should be done. And then how it is done is a process. And then the tool, what are the tools available to do that? So what are the existing capacity? What are the gaps in the capacity? And how that gap could be filled? In the disaster risk management area, we go for the cause and effect analysis. Whenever disaster happens, we look at the cause and the effect. And this cause and effect is a kind of a post-disaster loss, as Dr. Gupta has already mentioned, as a loss assessment, and we do as a kind of a, like I will give you one example when we did a funny cyclone, and then we found that, okay, and the normal procedure, we do the post-disaster need assessment. And we found that it is almost a 32,000 crores of loss. Now, here the audit begins. That 32,000 crores of loss is coming from where, why, and how. So here, that all those knowledge and capacity to be looked into, that infrastructure, we say, then the infrastructure is one part, and then where that infrastructure was built, whether this infrastructure is getting audited and this infrastructure could not sustain against X wind or Y wind or Z wind or whatever the kind of hazards which we had. So it is ideally, if we are not talking about post-disaster, if we're talking about pre-disaster. So what is the pre-disaster kind of a process which we should have in the kind of a, so it will combine with the assessment and also the kind with the audit. One is that inbuilt environment and also that what is the proposed environment. So inbuilt environment, you do the audit of infrastructure, you do the audit of the people also, those who are at risk. So it's normally to be seen that audit of what, and we are doing this audit for this with the what is the objective of doing this objective, this audit. So Dr. Gupta mentioned about that whether we keep target. So target means what? That whether we want to reduce the disaster mortality, or we want to reduce the economic impact, or we want to reduce the impact on the lives of the people, life and livelihoods of the people. So that should be very fundamentally clear. And then we have to accept that what is the acceptable level of risk. So it's not that we are going auditing for the existing infrastructure to the zero. And what we are saying is what is the acceptable, and that would depend on the local capacity, local community, and local governance. So that acceptance has to be there as a kind of a acceptable level of risk, because every audit is leading to now a new investment. So new investment in order to reduce the impact of disaster risk on the lives of the people and also on the infrastructure. That is the basic motto of doing any audit. So when we do that audit, and is a very financial terms, and these financial terms are now being taken into environment, into development, and also into the kind of a disaster risk management. So Professor Gupta has mentioned about what Mr. Prusti was telling in terms of the audit, and audit is the financial terms. And then once you do your task and then go for that auditing where you followed the rule or where you did not follow the rule. So there, then you see, and then there is a, normally we say that here is a discrepancies and here is to be improved. Same way, like say, if we are doing a risk audit of, say, any of the place, say, coastal areas, and we say in the coastal district, X district or Y district or the Z district. And then you say, looking at that, we do the risk audited ex ante. Ex ante means pre-disaster. So there it will combine that one is the assessment where we do have a tools which we say as a probabilistic assessment and the deterministic assessment. There is a financial loss assessment. And then loss, then we'll say that why these loss are coming as a projected loss. If we say that if any X disaster or Y disaster or Z disaster will come with the kind of intensity of X, Y, or Z, then the potential loss would be of, say, 30,000 crore, 40,000 crore, 50,000 crore, so and so forth. So if it is an assessment, we say the probabilistic is the assessment. Then, but so that why this cost is coming, then we are going for different sectors. We are going to economic sector, we are going to infrastructure sector, and say that this particular infrastructure is not properly made as per the prescribed norms or the building bylaws or whatever the parameters which have been given for everyone. There is that audit comes in. Audit comes in, one, this probabilistic assessment you do, and then you try to identify why this value is coming, and then this value go backward. That then backward assessment, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these are the stages, as that explained beautifully by Professor Gupta. And those stages, you can draw that as a kind of a, so it is a combination of audit when we are saying to disaster risk management, ideally, which I think I may be wrong, but this is my personal view, that it should ideally be taken with the kind of assessment and an audit also both together. Assessment will give you the picture of the probabilistic or deterministic loss, that this is the probable loss which might occur. And then you are putting up that why this loss is coming. Then you go into cause and effect analysis. And then cause, you can start looking at, that is the auditing. And that auditing has to be done on certain parameters. If there is a school, then infrastructure audit of the school. If it is a road, then you have to go into the roads. What are the prescribed norms which we started with? Then you have to look for the DPR. Then DPR, whether it has missed out those things, and then if DPR has not completed those parts, then you have to build it. So how auditing will take part if disaster risk auditing requires a certain 8 parameters. So that 8 parameters should go into the DPR time itself. As Dr. Gupta was telling that, yes, we have to do environmental impact assessment, social impact assessment, so disaster impact assessment. So disaster impact assessment we are doing in a DIA, and then disaster impact assessment, we have the tools like HGS and other things which we have. Software is there, hardware is there. So hardware is the building and everything you can see, then software, what is there available, the knowledge is there, information is there, tools are developed, and so start looking into those into that. So it's very important to look at that why we are looking for audit. And if we are looking for the audit, and then this audit would be towards one disaster only, to 2 disasters only, or 3 disaster site only, or it's a multiple disaster, or it is done with the cascading. Multiple is different and cascading is different. So multiple is different, that multiple scenario would, one area could be, one infrastructure is has a high exposure of, say, earthquake, landslides, flash floods, so and so forth. And cascading would be different, like one leading to another. So there we have to see that how these two are interlinked. So the concept which has been explained by Professor Gupta is to be seen in this format, that how that should be see how we are seeing at that whole of a auditing system is in the form of assessment. I will take 2 more things. One is the micro and the macro. Micro is this, that you are making this assessment is at the local level, individual building, individual family, individual infrastructure. And suppose you are making an assessment of a unit. So that unit has to be taken into a kind of a consideration of that this unit is the risk exposure of this particular unit is, say, quantifiable form. You can do as a kind of a grading, or you do the quantified format of the economic quantification. So that is to be brought in, and the whole of the unit added together will get from the aggregates, and that aggregates is the macro. So is always the link between the micro and the macro audit. So micro auditing would be done with the unit, mohalla, district, and then go to the states. So simply going to the aggregates, and how these aggregates are actually computed together to get a data of that, yes, this is the kind of a value of our, and then the disaster audit, the risk parameter is this. This will lead to a probable loss of this. So this has to be plugged in. So for that, it is important that any infrastructure, like India is planning for 5 trillion economy and 2 to 3 trillion investment in the infrastructure. So that infrastructure will go in the social sector, in the economic sector, and also in the infrastructure sector. So economic sector, infrastructure, and the social sector. Each of the sector will have different, or if you do the auditing of this, and how these are actually getting impacted, the life of the people in terms of impact and effect analysis. So impact would be a kind of a long-term, and effect would be a quick success, a quick impact of the disaster. but in the long run, it is. So this will give a very good policy insight that if X area or Y area, if disaster auditing is done, and we find that it has a kind of a cumulative loss to life, the social kind of a fabric will go haywire, and also that economic losses would be huge, then probably we need to have a kind of a policy. And this came into existence also in India way back in, I can recall that in the 2001 or 2 or something, 3 or 4, when the Ministry of Finance came with the order that each and every infrastructure which is having more than 100 crores of value, it has to be done disaster audit. And this disaster audit exposure to different kind of a disaster of that particular area. If you're making investment in coastal area, it has different parameters. If you're making investment in the landlocked states, like in so that parameters would different. And if you're making it a multi-hazard prone areas, that would be a different. So that tools have to be applied very significantly, varying to each and every project. And that project will form a kind of this X country or Y state or Y district. It will go for the state and go to the national level. What kind of a policy we have, public policy for risk auditing. And that will flow into the DPR. So DPR will not go as all of a sudden start doing the audit. But the moment you do the audit, it will have a kind of an investment cost. And that investment cost that have to be plugged in. So that plugging in has a cost. So ideally, when the SDG agenda or 17 agenda, when we are trying to achieve, and see that every agenda requires certain investment in hardware. And those hardwares to be audited, where we are making those hardwares and where significantly we are losing the track of that, attaining that because of the catastrophic situation. So here I would say that we would bring that into a kind of a practice. And he said very rightly that unless we have policy, we are not supported with the policy, then we probably will not have this kind of an impact. So ideally, like many of the states are moving with their own policy, disaster measure into the concrete, not in the concrete, because you can say that Supreme Court order say that is a concurrent list, but it is important to look as a state subject. So state is taking initiative and where the national government is facilitating. So what is the capacity of the country to taking up this audit? So first to understand the audit, why we are doing audit, what is the audit? It has been explained very well, and how this audit is taken place. So how would be a very, very important, and who all would be doing this audit? By whom? Whether we have a certified agencies who are there to certify that X people or Y people or Z people are certified to do the audit. So whether NIDM courses, they give the certificate, like what we say, Dr. Gupta said that we are having this and we are doing this courses. Our certification will also have the count if NIDM is giving this certificate that X person has been trained or Y person have been trained in this disaster auditing. So that could be taken as a kind of a building professionals and bridging the capacity gap. So that would help. So disaster auditing, I would say, is the need of the hour. It is being done at each and every family level in any decision-making process. At the individual level, it is fine, but when it comes to the larger macro perspective, then it gets missed out. So everybody's babies is nobody's baby. So that kind of a concept which comes is that when we say that disaster management is everybody's baby. So everybody's baby is nobody's baby. So we do not know that who will take the responsibility, who will take the charge, who is accountable, who is not accountable. So in the local level, if you have village level, panchayat level, if you see that infrastructure is coming, large number of infrastructure is coming in the rural area and the urban area. So what is the capacity of the local bodies at the urban area and also at the local area, the panchayat level? And if they are into infrastructure building, what is the capacity to do the risk auditing? And that risk auditing of the disaster where they are exposed to. So overall, we have to see that huge capacity gap that has to be brought in place, and understanding in terms of policy support, program support, and then program support lead to the capacity building support. So all cycle, and this audit has to be done for all the disaster and cycle he has already explained, for preparedness, for mitigation, for risk assessment and risk reduction, and also for the disaster response system. So holistic, and you say it has to be linked with the climate change because both are now influencing each other. The climate change is happening and we are trying to quantify the loss. So there is also that climate auditing, if you say that he's saying that carbon emission with a green technology. So how these two tools, like if it is related to climate and it is related to DRR, that get combined together and find a place and making it a very simple tool so that everyone can use it, usable tools. So that is my take, which I would say that is a kind of a making it simple, not making it complex, and it should be part and parcel of the local planning level, where the project is getting conceived and also project is getting executed. So there, an IDM institution like ours and yours at the people level and the sphere academy and all, we need to take this as a kind of at the local level. So that capacity gap has to be filled. So concept-wise, it is very clear. The process is explained very nicely. So how this can be taken to the local level and then taken to the aggregate at the macro level. So the macro level will give you the exact picture, and micro level will take you the functional details of that, how it is to be done and taken at the stage-by-stage process. So risk auditing, we would say, as a kind of a for the building and structure, which is already for the inbuilt environment, and also for the project which is about to come, which is going to be implemented. So both ways. One is that existing infrastructure, inbuilt environment, and also about that projected projects in that particular area. This one. And the second is that if leaving people behind, that it will not be a successful model. So for doing that, people must be the nucleus of everything. So putting people first in the risk auditing, that how that physical vulnerability of the people, the social vulnerability of the people, and economic vulnerability, these three also be made part and parcel of the risk auditing. So unless and until people's risks are identified, their risks are audited, then probably, then supported by infrastructure, then we combine together as a kind of a holistic disaster risk auditing. So my take is here only, and I stop here. That's what we say. Again, I'm going back to my marriage example, that if it is done, well and done, all parameters are checked, but there is still a chance of a breaking of the marriage because some parameters might not be, we don't foresee. So we have to anticipate, which has not been anticipated. So those kind of things should also be brought in as a kind of a, whatever the practice which have been, we have taken socially ordained, culturally ordained, economically ordained, that should be brought into a kind of a framework, and that should be taken into a kind of a for disaster risk auditing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. You have very clearly explained about like why, what, and how we should look into the disaster risk audit, and also you have emphasized about the capacity gap and how we can bridge it, and what are some of the recommendations that can be done to bridge the gap. So two things: one, we have gone over more on time. Second, we have a lot of questions on the chat box. Is there anybody who wants to ask that question out, since we have both our speakers here? So I think that would be easier, or else I can read the questions out. So one question, I will read it out to save the time. So one question was like, what is the process of risk audit at Panchayat level, and how can we include it in the GPDP to minimize the risk? The question was from Rajwinder Kaur. So if any of the speakers want to respond to it. The question was, what is the process of risk audit at Panchayat level?
Sir, are you going, or should I?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, in fact, I will for this question, I will take the lead from the example given by Professor Santosh Kumar only. He told that both the methods are, both the process would be important. One is disaster risk and vulnerability assessment, and second is disaster audit. So for integrating disaster risk DRR and CCA into GPDP, we should have a basic understanding of risk and vulnerability. So for that, basically risk and vulnerability assessment would be important. So that will be a beginning step. But once we have a plan with us, we have done vulnerability assessment, we have prepared a GPDP, we have integrated DRR components. So whatever we have listed under DRR that we should do this, we should do this, we should not do this, in order to see whether we have really implemented that what we have included in GPDP for DRR, to what extent, and if not, why we have not done, why we could not do that, why we failed or why we succeeded, then it will be a disaster risk audit. So disaster risk audit is some kind of a administrative tool, basically an evaluation tool. So both aspects would be important, but we should not make people feel afraid of the terminology of this tool, that okay, the GPDP is a simpler tool for village and these two big tools we are talking about. So people should run away from talking about DRA. No, it's not going to be a very difficult tool. For village level, it will be a very, very simplistic tool. We can have a checklist that these were the things recommended and these were the periodicity and this was to be done by this stakeholder. Whether it has been done, if it is about to be done in 6 months' time, whether it was completed within time or not. If it took more time, why it took more time. So basically, it's not fault finding. One thing I would like to also mention here, that audit is not actually fault finding. So we should never worry about this. Audit is basically some kind of a evaluation and review. The strong areas and weak areas, it is some kind of a SWOT analysis, so that we can improve, we can take the course correction, and also we can improve the future. It is not a fault finding exercise. Yeah, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope the question was answered. So we'll quickly go with one more question. This is from Prishti sir. So his question was, how do you place a social cost benefit analysis of disaster prone projects? Santosh sir, would you like to take the question?
Professor Santosh sir, would you take this question?
Which question? Can you repeat that?
Sir, they asked that how to look at the social cost benefit analysis of the projects.
Okay. Look, many studies which have been which are there in the country and also at the national, international level. On any project, without CBA, nothing is done. Without cost benefit analysis, like suppose we are making a hospital. So first is the structural audit, and that structural audit is done that this particular thing is going to be for say 20 years or 30 years, this kind of a particular kind of an institution would be there, and this will be, these are the benefits listed out that would continue giving that. So that CBA is the permanent kind of a mandatory integrated form of the analysis. So cost benefit analysis is always there. And many of the projects and the studies which have come up, they're saying that it is always go for the risk auditing first and giving the larger benefit. Benefit not only in terms of saving money, one is the money, but second part is also the social benefits. Even if you are money part, you are taking the less amount of money you are getting as a return, as a dividend, but the larger dividend you are getting as a social benefit. So this is very, very important to be seen. Cost benefit analysis is there, always been there in the project. And now it is also being included in the form of disaster risk auditing. And many of the projects which have been done without disaster auditing CB analysis, they are also looking at that. Had it been done like that, probably we would have got that kind of a benefit. So that is always being seen as a without done CBA on the basis of disaster. That's also giving a good kind of a analysis when the projects are coming up. Many studies you can take it from UNESCAP, also World Bank studies also on there, and you will find large number of local level projects have been evaluated, and that projects are giving a higher value of cost benefit, one, and also that economic return also.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay. So I think, Prishti sir, are you trying to follow up that question?
Yeah, I raised a couple of more questions for the time permit, because both my friends are very knowledgeable, and their reflections will help our work in the sector. So that's why I raised those questions. So if time permits, they can address those questions, or they can answer the questions separately or outside the chat box. That's okay. But my point to the Professor Santosh's answer, the standard protocol of CB analysis is there for any investment, but social cost benefit, SCBA is not done as a routine, is done in certain cases. I was trying to give an example that the Uttarakhand crisis that happened, many people attributed it to the powerhouse of NTPC. So I raised that question in a little pointed manner, since it is a limited group discussion. So I ventured to raise these questions. I'm not trying to criticize anybody. That the risk, every project has to go through a vulnerability risk analysis. So whether NTPC did vulnerability risk analysis while designing the project, or they went through only the CV analysis. I am sure they must have done the CV analysis, but otherwise the money sanctioned for that would not have happened. So I'm sure they would have done that. But my question is whether they did the vulnerability risk analysis or not, hazard vulnerability risk analysis. If they have done that, did they draw a risk management plan? And if they have made a risk management plan, did they implement the risk management plan? If they have implemented the risk management plan, when the disaster occurred, any disaster risk audit took place and looked at that risk management plan and found out that what could have happened better, what couldn't do well, and what was the problem and all that. Then if all these things have been done, I know there are certain assessment was done by NDMA and some experts and all that. Was there a management letter? Because as a protocol for any audit, after the audit, a management letter is issued by the auditor to the management. So this independent authority or the national authority which made the assessment after the disaster, did they issue a management letter to NTPC management? And if so, what was the outcome of that process? So those things will make our system robust. That's why I was telling that cycle approach, that assessment, preparing the management plan, then implementing the plan, and then auditing by ensuring that plan is adhered to and implementation is done, and if it is not done, then how it is to be done better, and who is responsible for not doing it, and who is responsible for doing it better. Those things will improve our robustness of the system. That was my point, Professor Santosh and Professor Gupta.
Thank you so much, Prishti sir, for raising that point. So if there are any more comments, we would use this time for that, or any questions. But if not,
Anil Gupta ji, did you worked in IIM Ahmedabad as a ITK specialist?
He is also Anil Gupta ji. He is
Anil K. Gupta ji. He is also.
He is.
Okay. He is different from you.
Yeah. I would not say different. He is more senior. He is very senior.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
Senior Anil Gupta.
Okay, thank you, sir. Because we have associated with his program.
He has been our teacher as well.
Okay, very good. Nice to hear, sir.
But he also works in similar areas.
The unique activity is documentation of ITK, indigenous technical knowledge.
Yes, yes, yes.
From a village level.
Yes.
And he
He is promoting a lot of innovation. Basically,
also,
during COVID also, his work on innovation and also innovation for disaster resilience at local level. And I think that's very important. And this DRA also coming as an innovative tool, actually. That will help. That will help protect lot of new initiatives at the village level, lot of new initiatives at city level.
City level for COVID also.
But only thing that we should keep it clear that it should not be like a fault finding this thing, but it should be rather a evaluating our own interventions so that we can be little honest also. Otherwise, if we are not honest, then no assessment is of use.
Yeah. Honesty is important, very important.
So there should not be any threat of any punishment. So that this is important.
You used to publish a honeybee newsletter.
Yes.
In Telugu, Tenetiga. We used to do.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
But Professor Gupta, punishment is one aspect, but accountability is another aspect. Accountability and punishment are different. And it's not. Accountability doesn't mean that somebody should be punished. But accountability means it is his responsibility. Why did he not do it?
Agreed, sir. And but this audit approach helps identifying their own mistakes, which are undertaken unknowingly, unintentionally.
That's on Professor Gupta. We call it internal audit. So that means internal audit will make our own audit system to check our work. But
no, even second party and third party also.
You can.
Basically,
that's why that is the purpose of the management letter. Management letter helps you to see that what I could improve.
Yes. Similarly, I suggested that there can be 3 different kind of risk audit. For example, there are 3 cities. And one city does audit for other city. City A does for city B, the experts. So it is the second party. City A does for its own this thing, then it is the first party. But if there are outside experts which are not part of any city governance, then it will be third party audit.
But practically, Dr. Gupta, it will not be possible. Why? The one district magistrate will never allow the other to come in.
Sir, it is happening. No, sir, with respect, now you see the Swachh Bharat, Swachh Sarvechan.
It's happening. One is auditing others as a third party.
Yes, so it is happening, sir. Now people are becoming open because they want to improve.
Okay.
And we have to improve this culture. I think it will open, sir.
Usually there is no audit for disaster relief works as well as general election expenditure. Is it okay?
What?
Usually there is no audit for disaster relief activities and general election expenditure as well.
Professor Santosh, sir.
No.
Please clarify my doubt.
No, everything is being audited. Nothing is going without audited. Only that we say that emergency fund, which is at the time of crisis, but post-audit is always happens. Nothing is going, government money doesn't go without audited.
Audited. Okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think we had a very productive discussion on what is disaster risk audit, and Anil sir rightly said it's a very innovative measure which can very much improve the efficiency of the disaster management efforts by the government, let it be NGO or even a small grassroots level sector. It can bring in a lot more resilience in our efforts. So we had a lot of questions, which unfortunately due to the time constraints we could not, but we hope that we can take it forward and give a platform to clarify those doubts again. I think we will conclude the session as of now. It was a very enlightening session, and I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all those who made this event a success. I would like to express my thank you to Professor Anil Gupta and also to Professor Santosh Kumar for delivering a very comprehensive presentation on the concept of disaster risk audit, and also for the valuable insights on why, what, and how aspects of disaster risk audit. Your clarity and expertise explaining the necessary steps and significance of conducting such audits have been truly enlightening, and we have covered very wide perspectives on disaster risk Risk Audit. It was actually like a master class. I was thinking on how can I effectively compile this into a document so that people can later, look through it and understand it, like, in a very
that could be
manner.
wonderful. Maybe a 2-pager or 3-pager if we can do it. That would be good.
Yeah.
And later we
Surely
can plan. Later we can plan for maybe a physical 1 or 2 days program also jointly with an idea.
Exactly, sir. So I think this is something that even we would be taking it forward. So as like Santosh sir said, training on like to gap that capacity building in this disaster risk audit like concept. So also I would like to express my special appreciation to Prishti sir for initially providing insightful introductory remarks, and also he was the one who was suggesting us to conduct a session on this topic. So thank you so much, sir, for attending the session. And lastly, I would like to extend my heartfelt thank you for all the participants who dedicated your time and actively engaged the session. We hope that you got capacitated on the basics of DRA and understood its know-how. So thank you so much for your time. And we hope that sessions like this will, help us our conduct our disaster management activities more effectively. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, speakers, and thank you all the participants. Thank you so much.